Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into this chilling legend, the Axeman of New Orleans. Our sources, they paint this picture of just brutal violence, but also mixed with this really bizarre, almost theatrical flair.
Absolutely.
And the fact he was never caught, well, that just cemented his place in, true crime history.
Yeah,
It's still unsettling.
it really is. And what's so deeply unsettling looking through the research, it isn't just the horror of the crimes themselves, it's the fear. The profound citywide fear this person managed to instill. One source described it as holding the entire city hostage with dread.
Wow.
Understanding that psychological impact, that terror, that's really key to what we're discussing today.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. Based
Yep.
on the materials, our deep dive, it looks like we'll tackle it this way. First, the story, the crimes, the victims, the impact on the city back then. The second, we'll get into who were they. Looking at facts versus myth, which there's a lot of, and why they were never caught, who the suspects might have been, if any. But the main thing today, really drawing from those psychological analyses, is the killer's mind.
Yeah.
What were the motives, the psyche? What traits drove this terror?
Yeah, and we should probably say up front, like several sources point out, some details are disturbing. Our aim isn't to, glorify it, but to try and understand the mind behind that kind of terror based on what we have. Seeking insight, not
Yeah.
just shock value.
Got it. So let's go back. New Orleans, late 1910s, the vibrant city, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then suddenly these terrifying attacks start happening. Our sources say it began almost quietly before exploding into panic. Can you lay out those first key events? What were the signature elements everyone started noticing?
Well, the pattern that emerged, it's detailed in the crime reports. It was deeply disturbing, mainly home invasions, often late at night, targeting people in their beds, in your safest space.
That violation.
Exactly. One analysis really highlights how that amplified the trauma way beyond just the physical attack and the way he got in. Often the same. He'd quietly chisel out a panel on a back door.
Like, take his time.
Seems like it. Reach in, unlock it. It suggests, according to one source, planning, patience, and this disturbingly quiet skill.
That's chilling itself. Someone methodically breaking in like that. And the weapon, the axe, often the victim's own.
Yeah.
One note highlights that as just particularly brutal, intimate almost.
It is. The axe, it's described in several sources as, well, visceral. It demands close proximity, a lot of force, and the injuries, awful. Crushing skull fractures, terrible lacerations. The fact he often used the victim's own axe, that raises questions, doesn't it? Was it just opportunity? Grabbed what was there so he didn't have to carry one? Or, as one study asks, was it symbolic? Turning a household tool into this instrument of death against its owner. A really disturbing detail for the profile.
Absolutely. And it seems, looking at the autopsy reports, the head was nearly always the main target. That says a lot about the intent to, well, terrorize, right?
It strongly suggests, an intent to kill quickly, decisively, maximum force to a vital spot. Could also point to a specific rage, maybe focused on the face or head, like wanting to obliterate identity, making it even more terrifying for survivors or witnesses. And what's notable is some people did survive these brutal attacks, though often with just devastating injuries.
Right. So there were eyewitness accounts.
There were, but understandably, as one trauma study details, they were often fragmented, inconsistent, heavily influenced by the trauma,
Hard to even imagine that terror. Okay, so the time period, late 1910s, New Orleans. What was the vibe then socially? Any tensions?
Well, the early 20th century U.S., it was a time with a lot of anti-immigrants feeling. New Orleans wasn't immune. Our historical readings detail this palpable nativism. Groups like Italian Americans faced real prejudice.
And that seems relevant given the victims.
It becomes very relevant when you look at the pattern of who was targeted, which several crime reports highlight.
Yeah, the Italian-American victims, mostly grocers. We'll dig into that more. But it's important context for the killer's potential mindset.
Yeah.
But beyond who he targeted, the way he attacked must have spread fear everywhere, right? The papers from the time seem full of it.
Oh, absolutely. The brutality, it often went beyond what was strictly needed to kill someone, which suggests, according to some psychological profiles, maybe an element of sadistic gratification. He enjoyed inflicting extreme suffering.
Wow.
The Axeman didn't just kill, he held the whole city in this constant state of dread. People were reinforcing doors, buying guns. It's documented in letters, diaries.
So the fear itself could have been the goal, part of the reward.
It could very well have been a huge part of his psychological reward, a demonstration of his power. One theory we looked at suggests exactly that. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted New Orleans to know he could kill, anytime, anywhere. The axe wasn't just against flesh, but against the city's feeling of safety.
That is a chilling thought. Deliberately creating panic. And then came the letter. The moment the terror went, well, theatrical.
Right. The letter. Published March 13th, 1919, supposedly from the Axeman. That was a turning point, mentioned in almost every account. It injected this bizarre taunting, this self-importance into an already terrifying situation, made the psychological impact even worse.
Can you describe it? The content, the impact? It's just such a weird twist.
The letter was just stunningly arrogant, fantastical claims. He called himself a spirit, a fell demon from the hottest hell.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Bragged about his killings. And then, the really bizarre part, he declared he loved jazz music and issued this ultimatum. Tuesday night, March 19th, he'd spare any place where a jazz band was playing full tilt.
And the city actually did it, played jazz everywhere.
They did. That night, New Orleans was just a wall of jazz sound. Homes, halls, everywhere. Eyewitness accounts, newspapers, they all document it. And amazingly, no Axeman murders were reported that night.
So what does that tell us about the killer's mind from a psychological standpoint?
Well, the letter gives this disturbing peek into what might be a very disturbed psyche, claiming to be a spirit or demon that points towards serious narcissism, a grandiose self-image. He saw himself as more than human, maybe supernatural.
Like a god complex.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And a clear desire for fame, or infamy, really. The letter wasn't just a threat, it was a performance, ensuring his legend. It was a game of cat and mouse on this huge scale, taunting the police, the public, showing he was in control, controlling their fear.
And the jazz thing.
Yeah.
It's so specific. Any theories on why jazz?
Exactly. Why jazz? Was it maybe a genuine preference, weirdly tied into his violence? Or maybe symbolic? Mocking society somehow with this new kind of controversial music form.
Or just making himself seem even crazier, more unpredictable.
That too. Creating an even more outlandish persona. And there are those, less confirmed reports. Jazz playing on phonographs at some crime scenes.
Great.
If that's true, it really doubles down on the theatrical element, this strange connection.
It's like he was directing his own horror show.
Precisely. And even if the letter wasn't really him, though, people debated it. The city reacted as if it was real. That shows its power. It tapped into the existing fear and added this surreal, bizarre layer. Was he a performer? His stage, the dark bedrooms, his audience, a terrified city. The jazz letter feels like a demand for applause, a twisted encore.
Okay, let's shift to the victims. You mentioned Italian-American grocers being targeted most often. Was the pattern really that clear-cut?
Well, the majority were Italian-American grocers, yes. But it's important, as some analyses show, it wasn't only them. There were exceptions.
Which complicates things.
It does. Complicates any single motive theory based just on ethnicity. But the strong focus on that group leads to a few potential explanations.
Like the anti-Italian feeling back then.
That's a strong possibility, yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about the nativism. It's conceivable the Axeman was driven by ethnic hatred, saw them as outsiders. Another theory, floated back then and revisited now, involves maybe mafia stuff. Vendettas.
Because they were grocers. Maybe extortion targets.
Potentially. The idea was maybe these killings were made to look like a madman's work, to cover something else up. But the Axeman's methods, so brutal, so public, were kind of unusual for typical mafia hits, which were often more targeted, less theatrical.
What about just practical things, like maybe their shops were easier targets, or they were thought to have cash?
Definitely factors to consider. Small family grocers, often living right there, may be seen as having cash. Their homes might have been less secure, perhaps. And it's also possible, once that pattern emerged in the news.
Everyone just assumed.
Exactly. Confirmation bias. Any attack on an Italian grocer just got automatically looped into the Axeman narrative, maybe overlooking other possibilities.
So no single answer for why them.
It seems not. Was it heritage, wealth? Were they just symbols for him to terrorize? Or something totally random, personal that only made sense in his head? The lack of a clear answer just adds to the mystery and the terror.
And a huge part of that mystery, he was never caught. Vanished. Like Jack the Ripper or Zodiac. These cases that just hang there.
Right. The lack of capture is absolutely central to the legend. It fuels endless speculation. Who was he? Why did he do it? What happened to him? So many theories over the years. Locals, mafia links, even, given the letter, some really out there stuff.
But nothing proven.
Nothing proven. We just don't know. And that fear of the unknown, the idea that someone that violent could operate, terrify a city, and then just disappear, that's a big part of why these cases are so unsettling, why the terror lingers.
Which brings us right to it. The killer's mind. trying to get inside that why. Based on the psychological profile, the behavioral analyses we looked at, it feels almost impossible to really know.
It's incredibly tough. Motive, well, robbery probably wasn't the main thing. Reports show items taken were often minor, seems like an afterthought. And sexual assault, generally speaking, wasn't part of the main Axeman attacks. That sets him apart from a lot of other serial offenders.
So what else? Rage. Just pure hatred. Or that need for notoriety, for control we talked about.
Rage and hatred, absolutely possible, given the sheer brutality. But rage against what? Or who? Was it generalized? Or specific, maybe tied to the ethnic angle. The desire for notoriety to instill terror. That seems really strong, especially with the letter. He clearly loved the fear, the attention. It screams power, control over the city's feelings.
And then the mental illness angle. The bizarre letter, the jazz thing.
Yeah, that definitely raises the possibility of psychosis, delusions, maybe a severe mental disorder driving him. But then you have the planning, the careful way he got in, the escapes. That suggests a degree of lucidity, of control, that doesn't quite fit with someone completely detached from reality all the time.
It's that strange mix again, isn't it? Irrational behavior, but calculated action too.
Exactly. He left this bloody stage, but no clear script. Was he a bigot, acting out ethnic hate, a madman lost in his own world? Or this cold, calculating performer just high on the city's fear, using terror as his tool? The silence where his motive should be. That's maybe the most chilling part of the terror he created.
Let's dig into those psychological traits more. Being a spirit, a demon, that points to a specific kind of mind, right? Focused on being bigger than life, inspiring fear.
Oh, absolutely. It just screams pathological narcissism, a
Yeah.
deeply grandiose self-image. In his mind, he wasn't just some guy with an axe. He was like the supernatural force, an avenging angel maybe, or a playful devil acting on the world.
Wow.
Murder wasn't just murder, it was a statement. Writing himself into legend with every attack, the city wasn't just a hunting ground, it was his stage for this terrifying performance.
And the fame, or infamy.
Undeniable. The letter, the jazz ultimatum, was the real thrill, not just the killing, but the echo of it. The panic, the headlines, the bands playing desperately. Was that his applause, his sick form of celebrity, proof of his power to terrorize? And you see his contempt for authority, too. Taunting the police, telling the whole city what to do.
And the brutality,
Yeah.
the act with
Longevity.
acts, suggests maybe something deeper than just killing. Like actually enjoying the suffering, the terror.
Well, the axe is so personal, close up. The force needed, the horrible injuries. It's hard not to consider sadistic gratification, pleasure from inflicting that extreme suffering, seeing that terror. He likely didn't just want them dead. He probably savored those last moments, that fear. The axe wasn't just a tool, it was about domination, each blow proving his power over life and death.
And the jazz ultimatum. Thinking about it as maximizing terror.
It wasn't just quirky, it was calculated, wasn't it, to torment the whole city psychologically. Imagine that mindset, not just stalking one person, but holding everyone captive with fear. He literally made New Orleans dance to his tune. Every jazz note that night wasn't just music, it was a plea for mercy. A citywide chorus of fear conducted by one man.
Truly terrifying. What about the other angles, the Italian grocers again? Any psychological insight there?
Well, if he did target them specifically, it suggests deep prejudice, dehumanizing them, maybe believing he was justified somehow, a twisted kind of ethnic cleansing fueled by that era's nativism.
Or just symbols?
Or just symbols of something broader he resented, easy targets for his terror campaign. And the risk-taking, the repeated break-ins, the letter, that points to a personality craving excitement, thriving on danger. Each success, each escape would be this huge adrenaline rush, reinforcing his feeling of power, invincibility.
And the mental illness possibility again,
Yeah.
alongside being functional.
Right. Could the demon thing be a genuine delusion he acted on to justify the terror? Or was the madness just an act, a theatrical mask hiding a colder predatory intelligence focused purely on maximizing fear?
Or even hiding something else entirely.
We have to consider it. Maybe a personal vendetta hidden behind the Axeman persona, the jazz, all the theatrics. A cunning mind using the public terror as camouflage.
And the jazz. Back to the jazz. Beyond the ultimatum, maybe music it scenes? Other ideas.
It's unlikely just musical taste, right? Though maybe. Could be symbolic defiance. Mockery. Jazz was still seen as devil's music by some. Maybe he was embracing chaos, rejecting norms, adding to his scary image.
Using the city's own music against it.
Possibly. Playing on New Orleans' identity, using something beloved to make the violation, the fear, even worse. It definitely created a unique signature, made him unforgettable in the city's nightmares. Or Maybe it was just a red herring, trying to mislead everyone, point fingers somewhere else.
It's just a puzzle with so many deeply unsettling pieces, all pointing to this mind obsessed with creating, controlling, and maybe even savoring terror. So as we start to wrap up, what's the Axeman's lasting legacy? Why are we still talking about this? Why is it still so disturbing?
The legacy, I think, is just that lingering terror. The fact he was never caught leaves this void, this dark question mark over New Orleans history, over criminal psychology, and the performance part, the letter, the jazz. It's almost as disturbing as the violence. It suggests a mind that wanted to orchestrate the fear, control the story. He attacked people, yes, but he also attacked the psyche of a whole city, left this lasting imprint of dread.
What stands out to you most about his mind, considering all this? And for you listening, think about these complexities too. What do you think drove him? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
For me, maybe the most unsettling thing is that duality we keep hitting on. The brutal, almost animal violence with the axe, paired with that articulate, bizarrely poetic voice in the letter. The careful planning to get in, then the chaotic frenzy of the attack. It speaks to this profoundly fractured, terrifying psyche, capable of both calculation and unrestrained brutality, all in service of terror.
Thank you for diving into this dark chapter with us today. Until next time on The Deep Dive.
And maybe the most chilling thought to leave you with. It's the unknowable core. We can analyze the actions, the words, based on what we have, but the real why behind the terror, that remains locked inside a mind that just vanished into the night. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of the darkness that can exist, strike, and then disappear, leaving only bloody questions and the echo of fear.